What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meet Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meet Sperm. I'm your host, Dr. Omatma, and I have a really special guest today, Dr. Lulu Shimek. She is a fellow naturopathic physician and an expert in genetic health, working with patients experiencing chronic disease, hormone imbalance, endocrine disorders, gastrointestinal dysfunction, depression, anxiety, and fatigue. She believes that once we dive deep down to the root of the problem, the distortion, and ignite our body's innate ability to heal, we see unimaginable changes in our well-being. Hello and welcome, Dr. Lulu.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for our conversation today all about detox.
Yes. So detox is a topic that's near and dear, and I feel like that's true for a lot of naturopathic doctors. But I really want to talk about detox in the context of fertility. I know that you do a lot of fertility, so tell me more about how you approach detox in that preconception period.
Right. Well, one of the reasons why I think that and know that with my patients, detoxification is so important. It's all about the follicle. So we want to make sure we have at least a 3 to 6 month period for detoxification, 3 months at the minimum. Because what we want to do is we want to have the best egg possible, right? And that's one of the reasons why it can be challenging to keep trying if we're in this toxic state. So when it comes to detoxification, we want to create the optimal environment, like the supreme environment. And so when we're in that detoxification phase, what we're doing is basically getting all the junk out of the system that's been blocking us from maybe if you've been trying to conceive, or maybe you're just new and you're like, okay, we're going to get trying. So it's really important to basically set the stage for optimization.
Yes, absolutely. So let's take it down a notch and talk about what is detoxification. Like, how does that work? Where is it happening in our bodies? And is there like something special that we have to do to detox, or is our body just always detoxing?
Right. That's such a great question. I think that word is thrown around so much, like detox this and detox that. We do have different ways that we detox. Basically, what we're doing is we're cleaning out the body. And so that's like, we want to do that at a cellular level, right? To increase basically like cellular optimization. What you could think about is like you have a car and you have dirty oil in your car. It's not going to work well, right? It's just like getting an oil change. So you want to make sure that you're doing that oil change. And when you're getting ready to conceive in that preconception stage, you want to make sure that oil that you're putting in the car is like the best oil you can buy. So the organs that are really important for detoxification, one is the liver. And the liver is so important when it comes to making hormones. And we need our hormones for proper fertility optimization. So when we're doing a detox, so to speak, we're cleaning out the system from all the things that can be physical and emotional and spiritual, all the things that really aren't serving us for best fertility optimization. When we're thinking about like, what does that even mean and look like? We want to be reducing anything that be causing inflammation in the body. So like foods, for instance, could be sugar, gluten, dairy, things that are going to like, say, for example, you have PCOS and you have a lot of inflammation in the uterus. We want to make sure that that area is really decreased in inflammation to allow optimal fertilization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yes. Liver is a crucial component or a crucial organ in helping detoxification happen.
Yeah, totally. And the microbiome, the gut is super important too. And we're talking about detoxification. You could think about everything goes in through the mouth and has to have an exit point, right? And so it's going to be eliminated through our anus and rectal area. And if that tube is not running properly, we're going to have toxins that are staying in the system. So we want to have really good bowel movements, everything flowing through. So if my patients are coming to see me for fertilization help and they have a history of constipation, we got to make sure those pipes are moving really well, because we want to be absorbing the key things we're putting into the body, like great food, and eliminating the things we don't need.
Absolutely. So I've seen a lot of these like ads for people to detox, right? Like buy this kit, buy this herbal thing. Tell me what you think of those specifically around fertility, because I feel like, well, I'll let you talk first and then I'll tell you I have some thoughts on those.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think one thing is that fertility is a lot about the individual. So I really would look at a lot of different factors. Sometimes I will prescribe specific supplements or like a kit, so to speak, that I know that will be targeted towards them, but I don't use like a kit that's like filled with shakes and drinking lots of things to get them to eliminate. I would usually use things that are on a much kind of like slower, more gentle, and work a lot with food. And if we need to bring in, like, say there's a lot of, like I mentioned, history of constipation, I'll bring in some things to help get the things moving more effectively. Or let's say they're really fatigued, I'll bring in some things to help with the mitochondria, which are these energy powerhouses of the cell. So when you're seeing advertisements for like, this kit is going to help you achieve fertilization, you really want to be cautious about purchasing a kit. What's in it? Is it filled with lots of fillers? What's the food aspect around the detox? Because that's the important thing. We really want to just nourish our body with food because that's sustainable. A detox, if you're doing, let's say you're doing, I don't know, a 3-week detox that you bought a kit for, it's not a sustainable thing for helping you to have optimization in our polluted environment, which when we're talking about fertility, it can happen overnight, but sometimes people have a much longer journey and we need to be in this state of sustainability, and a detox that's really intensive is really not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like a lot of those detox kits maybe even have herbs that I wouldn't necessarily suggest for someone if they were trying to conceive, right? I think just being very careful, and I've seen it's kind of scary. One of my women that I was talking to, she was like, oh, I bought this herbal tea on Etsy. And I was like, oh, is that a thing? Like, what is happening? So I like go to Etsy and I look up fertility tea, and there's like hundreds. This is not like 5 products. There's hundreds of products that you could choose from. And I started looking through them because I was like, what are people selling that is going to magically get you pregnant?
Right.
And literally like so many herbs that are contraindicated for fertility and pregnancy. And I was like, oh my God, this is just so heart-wrenching, because there are people out here that are selling these herbs made in their house or whatever, like, here, let me make a tea blend in my home, only to be having a detrimental effect on fertility. So it's kind of gutting for me because like there is no regulation on this stuff. No one's actually saying, are these claims true? Are they real?
Right.
Are they like legitimate claims? So for those of you that are listening, I would say word of caution, right?
Yeah.
Like really be careful about what it is that you're putting into your body, especially things that say detox, because that can range. That can be a range from things that are liver supportive to bowel movers that you don't necessarily need. And moving your bowels is not the only way to detox, right?
So true.
Yeah,
so true.
Like, it's, what is it? Cascara Sagrada? And what's the other one?
Senna.
Yes, right? Like Senna is so potent and it can be helpful if you're in a bind. But that's not an herb that I would suggest taking for
daily use.
Yeah, that's not something you want to be on.
Yeah, that's going to clean you out in a way you never imagined.
Right. Yeah. So just be mindful with that and really getting support and getting the kind of customization and individualization that's needed to kind of help you have a good detox.
Right. That's so important.
To really like set the intention that whatever detox you're doing is really optimizing on a cellular level. It's supporting the mitochondria, because the end goal is for you to be able to get pregnant. And some of these like intensive box things are not going to get you there.
No. And I really like what you said about not just buying something that you're finding on the internet. You really want, when you're talking about fertility, you want to work with someone like yourself or me who knows what all the ins and outs and can recommend things that are going to be safe for you, fertility and for pregnancy, because there's a lot of contraindications that come into play. And you don't want to be using something that could be harmful for you in a way that you don't know about.
Right. Yes, absolutely. There's another thing you mentioned, which is the mitochondria.
Ooh, mitochondria. I love talking about them.
Are like our little favorite beings in there.
Right. Yeah. Our favorite friends.
Yes. Let's talk about mitochondria. So what are they? What are they doing in our bodies, and why do we need them for fertility?
Right. Oh, thanks. This is a great question. I love talking about mitochondria because I also work with a lot of patients with adrenal fatigue, which is pretty much like exhaustion and thyroid problems. And these all come into play with the mitochondria. So what are they? Basically, if you think about your cell, we have this round shape of the cell, and inside the cell, we have mitochondria, and they look like little, like, I don't know, like crazy little beans or oval shape with these little edges little around spikies. Them, little spiky edges. In a healthy cell, we have lots of them. And what they do is they provide energy to the cell, and they allow us to do all different types of mechanisms and processes in the body, a lot for elimination, detoxification, and energy. So when we have, that's a healthy cell. We're like, okay, great. I got lots of mitochondria in the cell. My cells are happy. I'm making lots of energy. And then what happens when we're in this toxic state is that those cells become kind of like, you can think of them like shrinking like a little prune, right? Kind of like dried up. And maybe you have one mitochondria in there and it's trying to do the job for all the processes that the good cell was doing in the past. And then what happens is it replicates. So it's like this one energy cell replicates into another one energy cell. And that's not really good if we're trying to have fertility optimization. And the other thing is that the reproductive organs, especially the uterus, that's where we have the most mitochondria. So we're talking about, we want that area to be filled with energy, have a great libido, be able to do its job, release a follicle. We need to have this amazing aspect of mitochondria. So we want to increase those mitochondria, give them the ability to have a clean environment, and then also be able to reproduce and create more energy. They're really involved in 1, energy, and 2, detoxification. So that's kind of the key when I'm looking at the energy level of patients. And also, are their cycles regular with fertility? And that's a key sign to me that they've been having a lot of irregular cycles, that a mitochondria are not living in like their supreme environment.
So what are some detox tools or things that you suggest for cell optimization and mitochondrial function while trying to conceive?
Right. Those are great questions. So I think we can look from like the elimination process, and this can be like really basic. You don't have to go, especially, being in a space of fertility and trying to conceive can be a little stressful, especially if you've been trying for a while. So bringing in, you don't want to do 1,000 things that cause more stress. So just creating a nice, clean environment, going through the products in your house that you're using, like household products. That's a great way to eliminate toxins. Also, anything you're using on your skin, makeup, hair product, creams, looking through all the ingredients, making sure you're using natural and organic, reducing all of the xenoestrogens in the body and any of those chemicals coming in. So that's just like basics, like, and you can do that like maybe in a week, go through all of your things and slowly start to replace them. It can be a little pricey when we're talking about the products for our female body. And then another thing is just drinking really great water, and that making sure you're hydrated, because our cells need lots of water. Our body needs water. You want to get at least half your weight in body ounce, half your weight in body weight in ounces.
Half your body weight in ounces. Yeah.
And so that's going to help flush everything out, right? And so I have some tips in a handout that you're going to post about like really super easy ways to reduce toxins in your environment. And you want to make sure that your house is your home, right? So it's like you're creating a good environment in your outside environment where you live and also in the inside, right? And so those two things, eliminating simple things and reducing toxic foods. So focusing on organic foods, that's also really important. So those might seem really basic, but they actually are the best way to detox. Mm-hmm. So supplements, B vitamins are a really great way to support the mitochondria. So in that preconception phase and that fertility optimization, bringing on a B complex is a really great way to, one, make sure the mitochondria are getting energy. Two, we can make sure that we're getting the folate that we need, but there's a little caveat to that. So I'll talk about that when we talk about some DNA. And I love magnesium because magnesium is so beneficial for the body. It's going to help energize the body. It's also going to help relax the system, which can, again, I was talking about that stress component. That's really important as well. So it's going to increase energy and help with that mitochondrial system and help with fertilization.
Awesome. I love all of those things.
Totally.
And you were saying earlier about a couple of things that you said, as far as the toxins in our environment, specifically for us females that we put on. An average woman walks out of the house with 187 toxins that she's applied onto her skin. The biggest organ that absorbs everything, right?
Right.
As good as eating it.
I know.
187 toxins.
Which is so crazy, right? It's unbelievable. And I think there was a study done of the umbilical cord, and it showed that there was 220 toxins from the blood coming from the mother to the fetus. So that's crazy.
Floating in the baby at birth.
Yeah. If you just think that single concept by itself, that should be a motivator to reduce your toxins.
Yeah. You're like reducing your toxin burden now before you conceive. Just imagine like you're impacting the health of your baby and the health of your grandbabies because the genetic material is already there that's going to be passed to your grandchild. So you're affecting a lot of change very quickly by doing some of these may seem simple things, but just taken to the next level and really just taking action on the simple things goes a long way.
So true. I love that. And I think it can be overwhelming to think about a detoxification as like, oh my gosh, we got all these things. But I think just the simplicity, taking things in an easy way and slowly starting to reduce things like that, the things in your environment, the things you're putting on your skin, the healthy foods, just coming from a really simple mindset with it. And like we said, like that sustainability will be good for the generations to come.
Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about another big component that comes up around fertility. And that is genetics, epigenetics. And I know you love talking about it. So let's talk about that. What are we impacting when we're making these changes? I think that we're affecting the epigenetics and this on a cellular level.
Right. So let's break it down a little bit because I think the world of DNA and genetic testing and what it means can be also, again, kind of scary because it's just like, oh my gosh, what are all these terms? So epigenetics specifically means the things in our environment, like pollution, water, food, that affects our DNA. That is changeable, right? Because it's something that we can then change our outside environment to have a different impact on our DNA and SNPs specifically. So then we're talking about the DNA with inside ourselves. That's our genetic blueprint, right? And so that's the DNA that we were given from our mom and our dad, like, or whatever the aspect of that was when the egg and the sperm came together. And that's what made us. And so that genetic blueprint then also has a way of how we function based on sleep, what we can eat, the foods, how we process foods, how we process particular vitamins, etc. So with the importance of looking at a genetic report in relationship to fertility is we can see preventative standpoint, like let's just take the MTHFR mutation, which is a great example. I think that's kind of like thrown around a lot, but maybe that's too complicated. I'll back up a little bit. So from that genetic perspective, when we have a DNA test done, so it's super easy, you do like a swab on the inside of a cheek, and then you're going to send it off. And then we're going to get a bunch of codes, basically like letters and numbers and information, which is pages of information. And so then it's a lot of information, which is why you want to work through with someone that knows what they're talking about. We take that information and then we we can see if there is a SNP in the system that is affecting with fertility optimization. And so what a SNP is basically you have a chain of DNA. It's a mutation in that DNA that causes a different reaction in your body that is optimal. Not that it's like detrimental to the system, but it's not optimal to the system. And I think that's really kind of clear, helps people understand like, well, why would I want to have my genetics test? Well, we want to see how are you using vitamin D? Like that's a great one, I think, because vitamin D is so important for our immune system and our bone health. So we can look and see how you're using vitamin D. Are you able to absorb vitamin D? What aspect of vitamin D is most important for you? So when I look at a DNA report for someone that's doing fertility optimization with me, I'm looking at all the components that might hinder them to have the best conception, to have the best labor as well. We want to look at all the aspects, how your body uses particular vitamins for clotting, for example, how you're going to, what's it going to be like on the other end of the labor?
Yeah, very good. So these little SNPs or single nucleotide polymorphisms, so they're little like areas of the DNA that are not functioning optimally, which is causing your body to do reactions that are suboptimal, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then if we know what those are, then what do we do about them?
Right, exactly. So from that, when we want to use the genetic reports, I talk to patients about using it from a place of prevention, right? Okay, let's say, for instance, we're like the vitamin D example. Like, okay, so I can see from a patient's report, they're not absorbing vitamin D well or using it well. So we want to make sure that we're giving a particular type of vitamin D that is the best for their absorption, whether that's through an increase in vitamin D. Maybe they need more than they've been taking. Maybe they haven't been taking any at all. Maybe they need it in a particular way, like with fat or a particular type of fat. So it can really help us to see what is best for them, but also in that preventative standpoint, if they have some genes that they're more prone to specific diseases in their family genetics, we want to make sure that that's available for their knowledge for them and their family too. So it's not from a scary standpoint. It's from an enlightening and empowering standpoint of like, oh yeah, look at this. This is great. Look what I can do to make some changes for my health.
Yeah. And this is not the type of genetic testing that is like, oh, you're going to have this disease, or you plus your partner are going to have this genetic mutation in a child. This is not that kind of genetic analysis or coaching. Like that is something that I don't know if you do this, but I generally refer them to a reproductive endocrinologist if there's any like potential genetic mutations that could cause an
like Down syndrome or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's a referral out. That's not my genius.
And we don't use information for a diagnosis for an illness, right? Mm-hmm. It's about like, this is a preventative thing. That's what you said about referring out. If there are some things like, oh gosh, this is some information we want to share with your team, right? Your OBGYN or a specialist, because this is some information that might be important for us moving down the road. And that way we can use it from that preventative standpoint for optimization.
Yeah, exactly. We have talked about a lot here. We started with detox. We've touched on mitochondria and what we can do about the mitochondria. We've talked about epigenetics and what that means and how to optimize epigenetics. With the fertility couples that you work with, what do you feel is the most common underlying thing that's happening that is impacting fertility?
I think there's two things I see the most common. One is stress. It's like this volcano effect, or they're trying and trying and trying, and they get more stressed, and then they're trying and trying and get more stressed. So I think the self-care component and stress reduction is always like 100%. I'm looking at that. Like, what's the mindset piece? How are you communicating? Are both partners on the same page about conceiving and wanting to have children? I mean, we got to look at all those factors with stress for sure. And then the second is detoxification, because I see when the body's toxic, you can't conceive. So, and I see that really easily through like a questionnaire. I'm like, oh yeah, from these things, I know your body's toxic, and most likely we're all in a toxic environment. We need to do some short, small detox. So those are the two things. And, you know, when it comes to stress, I think it's about being honest with your partner and really saying, hey, this is really stressing me out. And we just take a break. You're going to conceive most likely. You know, the percentage is higher in that realm. But I think taking that stress component out really helps people to just take a step back and have fun with it, right? Conception should be fun. You want to have that fun environment, and you want the baby that's coming in to be in a happy environment too, not to be in a stressed environment, especially for the conception, for the egg and the sperm to actually connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Hence egg meets sperm.
That's right. Exactly.
So what is the mindset piece? Like, what you talked a little bit about the stress and the need for self-care, but is there a mindset that really leads people down the struggled path or the not struggled path?
Yeah, I think that's really true. When someone comes into me, I can pretty much see the stress levels from a questionnaire, and also talking to them and seeing their history intake, seeing the things that are affecting them, their energy levels. And we want to see like the self-care. What I mean by that is, what are you doing to have the self-care in your environment? And what's your mindset around that? Are you making your self-care for a priority? Are you making your optimization for fertility a priority? Are you making your relationship with your partner a priority? And so the mindset is all about, one, it has to come from a calm place. It has to be, for us to be able to conceive, because when stress is not a good place for conception. And the mindset piece really needs to have this like resting and digesting, that parasympathetic system. So I look at the different aspects, like, it doesn't have to be every moment has to be about self-care, but you want to make sure you're some aspect of it. Are you doing some yoga or meditation or breath work? Maybe you're doing a gratitude journal or something every day that is in your practice of self-care, because you're going to need it when the baby comes. That's for sure. So if you're not doing it now, you're going to be sorry on the other end of the equation.
Absolutely. Life gets crazy as soon as the baby comes. So right. Yes, I feel like on some level, fertility can really prepare us in a unique way to be ready for bringing a child into the world. And I think it is those pieces around like taking time for ourselves, prioritizing ourselves, especially as moms, like the whole, do you have children, by the way?
I don't. I have two cats.
Okay.
Fur babies. I don't have any kids right now.
Yeah. So I have a little toddler, and like the mom guilt thing is so real. And I have to keep checking myself of like, oh no, that's not what we're doing here.
Right.
But really like to be able to say, hey, this is me time. I need a break. I need to like take care of me so that I can be a better mother. And all of that tends to like, we get some of those lessons on the fertility journey. So I think it's really important to pay attention and to say like, yeah, these are places that I'm not prioritizing myself, that I put myself on the back burner, or I've prioritized my work over how I feel in my body and my sleep and my self-care. So all of those pieces can really make a difference for the fertility journey and onward. What is to come after.
Right. Totally. That's so true. And, I love what you said about prioritizing yourself. That's really key, especially and learning how to say no and setting some boundaries in that pre-conception phase is really important, because you're going to need those moving forward. And talking to your partner about, or if you're having a child by yourself, which is amazing, but, learning when to say no to certain things so you can take care of yourself and your child coming in, or maybe and with your other children, like what do those boundaries look like? setting those things up ahead of time can help kind of prepare you when the situations come. Not you're going to know everything.
Yeah.
That's not going to be the scenario. There's always going to be surprises. But at least if you know, hey, yesterday was really hard for us. None of us slept for the past 3 days. Maybe the baby was sick. So you're okay, well, remember how we talked about, we're going to take some time out from life and just take a step back and take a whole rest day, whatever that looks like for you. But yeah, definitely setting those things ahead of time is key.
Yes, let's do it. Thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. And I love everything that you shared about just so many topics that we've talked about, right? So I appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and supporting all of the couples that are on this journey, hoping that egg meets sperm.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a joy to talk to you. And I love talking about fertility and helping people achieve their goals, which is so fun. It helps me be happy when I'm oh yeah, you're pregnant. Yay.
Right. Yes. This is one of the biggest joys of my life. So absolutely, I agree. For those of you listening in, make sure you tune in for tips from Dr. Lulu for the rest of the week. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.